Okay.
Yeah, we're live now.
Great. Hi, everybody who's joining us. This is Carolyn's Corner, and this is one of our efforts to reach out to folks as we are dealing with this unprecedented time in our country. We last week had guest hosts were Kibo Taylor and Wes Person. And this week we are pleased to have Congressman Hank Johnson. And the topic really is to talk about the CARES Act and some of the economic disruptions that we're all experiencing right now. Just to kind of briefly give some framework to this, one of the things I see a lot and hear a lot about are, people who have lost their jobs, who have been furloughed, who are really struggling economically right now. And so what Congress attempted to do, and the country is now attempting to implement, is aid to individuals who are struggling financially. And then the other thing I hear a lot about is businesses and small businesses that are struggling. And so we are concerned about them. And I'm hearing a lot of stories about small businesses who really need this aid that is coming from the federal government. So I think we have Hank Johnson on now. Is that correct?
Yes, I am on. I don't see myself though. Can y'all see me?
No, sir.
No, we can't see you.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me see.
If you go down in the corner of your screen, there's a start video. In mine, it's the left-hand corner.
Yes. Okay.
We are on Facebook Live though. So there you are. Yay.
All right.
Okay. Good to have you.
All right. Great to be here. How are you doing today?
Oh, we are doing great and much better now that you're here. We also have on here Jackie Kapler and Arthur Sidney that are with the Congressman's staff, who can also help us answer questions about the CARES Act. So I had just kicked things off, Congressman, and I was just giving a little context. And as I spend the days, on the phones and in Zoom meetings and talking to people all around this area, there's a lot of economic disruption and hardship that's going on right now, both at sort of the individual level where people are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent and buy food, and then at kind of the business level where there are lots of small businesses out there that are trying to figure out how they are going to survive this particular period of really severe economic disruption. So with that, I would love to turn it over to you if you want to talk a little bit about the CARES Act, what it did, what some resources are for folks that might be available to them. And I've got a couple follow-up questions, and then we can open the floor to questions. And I just want to thank everybody who's joining us as well. This should be a fun and informative conversation. So with that, turning it over to you.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Carolyn. And before we get into the CARES Act, I do want to let those who are watching and listening know how much I support you in your run for Congress. And the reason why is because, you were so instrumental in my run for Congress back in 2006, my first run, and it was Jonathan Ossoff, who was working with me on the campaign, who recruited you to my campaign to do opposition research. And so we go that far back. And so when you came to me a few years ago and told me that you were thinking about running for Congress, and if you decided to run, you would want my support. And I told you right then and there that I would definitely be supporting you. I was so happy to repay the gratitude the debt of gratitude that I owe to you. And so I endorsed you in your first run. And then when that run fell, 407 votes, was it?
433, yes.
433 votes short. I'd like to believe I was probably the first person on the phone to you to encourage you to continue the quest to not give up, to keep the faith, as John Lewis says, don't give up, don't give out, don't give in, keep moving. And that's exactly what you did. So I'm happy to be supportive of you in this second run for this race. And this time, I'm looking forward for you to be successful. And so I
Thank you so much.
look forward to you joining me in Congress, working on these important pieces of legislation like the CARES Act, because we're going to need CARES 1, we passed CARES 1. We're getting ready to do a supplemental to CARES 1, but we're going to need a CARES 2, CARES 3, and CARES 4. And this pandemic that we are experiencing right now is likely to continue through the time of the election and the point where you get sworn in. So I'm looking forward for you coming to Congress and lending your ideas to what we do to help people, workers, families, and small business people. That's what the CARES Act was all about. It was to support working people, people who are not working, but who might be on Social Security disability or something like that, or even on Social Security. Workers, families, and small businesses. So we completely changed the dynamic of the bill that Mitch McConnell first introduced in the Senate, which was overly concerned with protecting large businesses, and we turned it around and made it into something that I'm pretty much proud of.
Yeah.
And so what we have done in terms of protecting workers is to, and protecting families and people who are on Social Security, disability, or retirement, or people who are not in that stream of income. We've protected them by putting in a $1,200 cash rebate that will go to those folks. We've also, those folks with children, $500 per child. So a family of four, husband and or let's say partners, two people, two adults with a household, that's $2,400. And if they've got two children, you add $500 a piece for the children, that's $3,400 that's coming into their household. That's what the CARES Act provides for. And in addition to that, it provides unemployment insurance, an extra $600 per week of federal unemployment insurance on top of the state uninsurance check that a uninsured unemployed worker would be entitled to. And with that $600, that helps to bring the amount that workers who are unemployed receive up to the amount approximately that they would be receiving if they were working. And so this is designed, this cash business benefit, to supplement the state unemployment benefits, is designed to try to keep people as whole as possible so that they can continue to pay their ongoing expenses while they are unemployed. And then for the millions of Americans who, millions of people in America who are working for small businesses, there's help for the businesses that employ them. Businesses that have up to 500 employees are considered to be small businesses, and those businesses are able under the CARES Act to get get loans under the Payroll Protection Program. It's a $349 billion program that enables small businesses to apply for loans up to $10 million that are cover a period of 2.5 months of payroll so that they can actually keep their employees on the payroll. And of that loan that they would get, which by the way is a forgivable loan, so long as on June 30th, they have the same level of employees, the numbers, as they had on February the 15th. That loan becomes forgivable, so it's essentially a grant. So this money, up to $10 million per business, is there to help employers keep their employees employed, keep them on the payroll. And so we're trying to make our way through this pandemic, which has wreaked havoc on our economy in such a way that the economy does not just crash. So this is money that we're putting in. It's not a stimulus, it's not a bailout bill for businesses. Now, there is a fund of $500 billion within this $2.2 trillion CARES Act package, which supports the larger businesses. But again, that money that goes to the larger businesses is structured in such a way so as to require them to retain their employees on the payroll. So that way we are lifting, we are preserving and protecting this economy, not from the top down, but from the bottom out. Yeah. And so that's basically the concept of the CARES Act. It's clear that for the workers and the families and the small businesses and the large businesses that are covered under the terms of the CARES Act, it's not going to be enough. And so that's why we're going to have to come back with CARES 2 and CARES 3 and 4 and on and on.
Yeah. Could you talk, so a couple quick questions. One is, do you know the age for when someone is counted as a child in order to receive the 500?
It's a good point. 16 and below. Okay. So there is a group that unfortunately young people and young adults, you know, I mean, you might be in school, but if you're carried on if you are a dependent, if you're carried as a dependent, then you're not eligible for the $1,200 cash payment, and your parents are not in a position to recover $500 for you as a result of your dependency on them. And that is something that the Democrats in Congress fought to prevent from happening, but unfortunately, we did not get everything that we wanted in that bill.
Do you think that's something that's going to be addressed in CARES Act 2.0?
Yes, I think everything is on the table for CARES 2. Okay. Everything is on the table, but we just have to understand that if it were simply the Democratic ruled House of Representatives that could pass legislation and send it on to a president willing to sign it, then we get a lot more done. But we've got a recalcitrant Senate, as well as a president who is loath to protect the values that we in the Democratic Party and the House of Representatives uphold.
Right. I want to say, so one really important piece of the legislation, and thank you for being such a strong advocate for some of the pieces like this, is help to workers in the gig economy. So folks who are kind of self-employed, they have a 1099, and recurring theme throughout the campaign has been how so many companies now, they just treat everybody as contract employees, and so they don't get benefits, and they don't get the health insurance coverage. There are a lot of issues tied to this, but one of them has obviously been, they're not part of the unemployment insurance system. And I know there's been some talk about the gig economy benefits. I was reading about that some today. Do you have anything to reassure people or talk to folks? There's some very, very important benefits that were added in this CARES Act, and we really appreciate your advocacy for it. Can you talk a little bit about those benefits for the kind of gig economy contract workers?
Yeah, that's an important point. The CARES Act expands eligibility for unemployment insurance to self-employed individuals, independent contractors, gig employees, or gig economy workers, I should say.
Yeah.
They're not particularly classified as employees, but those classifications of individuals who are working are covered under the CARES Act. And in order for the states to get an extra or to share in the extra 500, so in other words, we've passed 3 pieces of legislation to address this COVID-19 crisis. And the second piece that was passed in March, all 3 passed in March. The second piece had to do with granting states federal revenues to utilize when they administer the CARES Act. And so it gave $1 billion to states, but it broke it down. 500 million was to all of the states, all 50 states. And then there's another $500 million that can be shared in if those states adopt the federal standards. And that federal standard was to include self-employed individuals, independent contractors, and gig economy workers within that unemployment who are eligible for unemployment compensation. So Georgia, in its wisdom, has opted to get into that extra $500 million. And so it is covering the gig economy workers, and that's a good thing, and the independent contractors as well.
Yeah. I think just for folks who are listening, welcome. We're talking about the CARES Act and sort of how Congressman Hank Johnson has been a really strong advocate for people in Georgia and what that means, the CARES Act, and so what kind of benefits from that are flowing out into the economy. In terms of the gig economy employees, I have looked at the Department of Labor website, our Georgia Department of Labor website, and it does seem like that's going to be a little bit more delayed. They've got to kind of put in place the processes for people to apply for that. But they do have some pretty clear instructions on the Georgia Department of Labor website. Also, if you go to carolynforcongress.com, we have created a website that has links to a lot of these resources. There is a process there, but it looks like that's taking a little bit longer than the traditional unemployment insurance to get out to folks, but hopefully they'll be getting that out soon.
Yeah, and part of that money was for states to be able to hire additional workers to be able to process this money that's coming through.
Right.
We have a very important, oh, sorry, Carolyn.
I was just going to say there's one other interesting aspect to all of this is that, we've not invested in our, a lot of the capacity of our government to actually administer these programs. And so it's flowing into departments that are often, badly underfunded as well.
Yeah, it's ironic that for the last 40, 50 years, we have been trying to shrink the government to the federal government to the size where, as Grover Norquist says, you can drown it in the bathtub. Now, 95% of Republican representatives in the House and Senate have signed on to the Grover Norquist no new tax quest. And so they've been cutting government while not expanding government, but actually trying to shrink government. It's called starve the beast. Yeah. But when we arrived at this coronavirus pandemic and the economic crisis that has ensued as a result, now everyone can see that a strong and robust federal government with enough employees to get the job done is in the best interest of America. So, you know, I mean, this is like a mirror. This crisis is like a mirror. And we're looking at this mirror and we're seeing that we've got to staff up government, federal, state, and local to be able to provide for the people. It's of, by, and for the people. And that's what government is all about. And I believe in government. You know, so I'm looking forward for you joining us, Carolyn, because I know that you believe that government is a force for good and is a protector of those who need protection.
Yeah.
We
Well,
have
I would, sorry. Yeah, Kyla, go ahead. Yeah, what have you got?
We have an important question here. What about those who are self-employed, but also may employ about 1 to 10 people part-time? What group do you think they belong to?
Well, they are small businesses and they can apply for the payroll protection program loans. And there's also some other loans, economic injury disaster loans that have been plussed up by the CARES Act that are available to these small businesses to help them overcome the hardship caused by this disruption in the economy. So you really need to go to the SBA, Small Business Administration website, sba.gov, to get information about the help that's available for small businesses. Now, there is a something that I should warn everyone about, and it is that the $349 billion available under the payroll protection program is there's a first come, first served aspect of it. And so the regulations went into effect about a week and a half ago. And so there already are a lot of people standing in line with applications, a lot of businesses, some that might have 499 people. And so you get a bunch of big businesses at the bank door crowding out all of the smaller businesses, a business with 5 or 6 employees. But that business with the 5 or 6 employees, or even 2 or 3, you know, is still in a position to apply for those loans. And so go to the SBA website, get with your accountant, go get with your banker to determine your pathways forward. And the sooner the better. And I will also add that Congress is looking at plussing up this small business $349 billion fund with an additional $250 billion. That supplemental legislation is being negotiated right now, and hopefully it will have some protections in there, some carve-outs specifically for the smaller businesses that cannot be crowded out from that piece by the large businesses.
Yeah,
So is it true that only 1% of money that was slated for small businesses had actually gone to small businesses? That's a question from another viewer that we have. And
Well, yeah, all of the money, yeah, once that money is out of the door, it will all go to businesses that have less than 500 employees. Now, a lot of the money, the bulk of the money has not been dispensed as of yet, of that $349 billion, but much of it is already in the pipeline with loans that have been approved, and monies will be flowing from the federal government to the banks. And it's 100% guaranteed by the federal government going to the banks. The banks will not lose anything off of it. In fact, they make about a 1% to 1.5% just by processing, being the pass-through, if you will, for these loans. So, but we have had a problem with some of the large banks declining to be the pass through to customers who they don't already have lending relationships with. And so that has forced some of the people who bank with the larger banks to look for smaller community banks and even credit unions to assist them for this money. So people do need to do their homework, and they need to act with some haste.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about the small business loans and sort of how tough it has been for small businesses to access it. But I know that there are a number of efforts to try to get more of that money out, and I know a lot of folks who are able to access it more quickly had pre-existing relationships with banks and already had lines of credit, and so were already business customers to banks. And those who didn't, which is a lot of folks, or were banking at credit unions or these community financial institutions, have had a harder time getting them. But I know that I know you guys are on it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're working the bugs out as we discover them.
Yeah, so everybody hang on. All right,
Yep.
I know, Kyle, you had one last question, and then
we do.
Wrap it
And
up.
so, Carolyn, what do you think is the most likely area of bipartisan cooperation that you plan on focusing on in your first 6 months? And then 2, what efforts need to be taken now to make sure Gwinnett voters are protected during this crisis?
Oh, well, I don't want to, Congressman, bipartisan cooperation. I mean, I would say certainly, I hope it would be bipartisan, that we're going to be working really hard to try to get the economy back on its feet. And I think that's going to be an enormous challenge. I hope we'll have bipartisan cooperation about getting people health care coverage. It was, I've been running on everybody needs quality, affordable health care. And it was really funny. Just the other day, I saw a David Perdue commercial saying, everybody needs quality, affordable health care. And so maybe we'll come around to fixing that. And as we have all these people now who are losing their jobs and falling off the payrolls and losing their health insurance, I hope it's coming home to folks that we just can't continue to operate this way. And as the congressman was saying, we need a country that cares for people, and we realize how very interconnected we are. And, we need a government that works for people. And it's not about drowning it in a bathtub. It's about making it effective on our behalf. And, that's why I'm running. The other one was protecting Gwinnett voters during this crisis. Obviously, so one of the big pushes we're making, Congressman, right now is to encourage everybody to vote by mail. And really trying to protect our democracy. And that is something that is also extremely important right now. If everybody, please vote by mail, please get your ballot in, your absentee ballot request in, and then vote early and track your vote. That's something that is extremely important. And we are just going to be following that so closely. I mean, every time the Gwinnett Board of Elections meets, we get an update, and we are just tracking that as closely as we can to try to make sure that every vote is counted, every voice is heard. Congressman, it's been an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for your help and support as we've run this race for Georgia 7 and to try to bring change here to Georgia. Do you have any last things you want to add?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this information to the listening and the watching audience. We're learning how to meet now virtually. We're getting used to it. We're getting used to Zoom. I guess we'll be having dinner sometimes together on Zoom, everybody eating, maybe having a sing-along or something like that. But we will get through this pandemic, but it's important that everyone be healthy. If people are predisposed to this illness because their immune systems are weak, because they have not had health care, they have a history of not having health care, and so they are, we've got to make sure that people have health care in this country so that we can become a healthier people immunize ourselves from these viruses that that are definitely going to continue to come our way. It shouldn't depend on you having money. That depends on whether or not you live or die. And so health insurance is so important. Thank you for hosting us tonight, and I look forward to working with you in Congress in the 117th session.
Okay. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you guys for joining us. Join us next week at 6 o'clock when we'll have our next Carolyn's Corner. And also just a quick announcement. Tomorrow, we are having another forum. It is going to be hosted through New Mercies Church. It's a community conversation, and we're going to be talking about some both the voting issues here in Georgia and public health issues. So join us there and join us next week at 6 o'clock for another episode. Carolyn,
don't forget about everyone. Don't forget about responding to the census. It's so important.
Oh, gosh, census. We've got a lot of civic duties to do this year. We've got a lot to do. Yeah.
Census and vote.
Yes. Okay.
Vote by mail.
Vote by mail.
Get those applications in by May 10th, I believe, is the deadline.
Yes.
Okay.
Applications can go in until right before the election. Registration is May 11th. The ballots will start to go out if you've sent in your application. So I got this all on the calendar right now in front of me. So the ballots, if you've sent in your applications, should start to go out in the last 2 weeks of April. So,
but those applications don't need to be in by when?
They can be in until the Friday before Election Day, which is June 9th. So
well, then you won't have a chance.
If you get it in that late, though, you might not get your ballot, right?
Yeah, so get them in by May 10th.
Get it in soon. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Kyla, for hosting. Take care.
All right. Bye.